Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of Tales from the Spinner Rack, our comic book review show. Sadly, this will be the last episode of Tales from the Spinner Rack for 2019. So get in your fill and let's read some comics. And with me today is from Absolute Geek. It's an Absolute Geek night. Absolute Geek night.
It is. Represent.
From the Absolute Geek Podcast, I'm Matt.
And I'm Corbin, the comic barbarian.
Jay is sick this week, so he couldn't join us. He's had the flu since last Friday. And sadly, we were supposed to have Ray Gunn writer and creator Gregory Schoen joining us tonight. But due to some unforeseen circumstances at work, he wasn't able to make it. So we'll have to get him on sometime next year. But that's all right. Corbin and I are ready to hold this down and we're ready to review some comics for last week. So what do you want to start? You want me to start?
You know what? Yeah, why not? I'll start. I'll start with one that was, cool. A nice, quick little read. I enjoyed it. Detective Comics 1017 or 1017. And I really did. Let's go over the creative team first. Tom Taylor is the writer. Fernando Blanco, the artist. John Kalisz on colors. Really good, quick book. Batman is, patrolling, doing what he can to protect the town. And it cuts to a teenager who's escaping from Martha Wayne's orphanage. And he's just running away. And, he's tired, he's scared, he busted up his knee and he's gone. Cuts down to Batman in the cave, and Lucius comes over to him and is basically like, hey, Bruce, do you have a minute? Last night a 15-year-old boy ran away. His name is Miguel Flores. And Batman at first is like, okay, troubled kids run away. I can't really do too much about that right now. I'll see what I can do. And he's like, okay, but this isn't the first time that a kid is running from this orphanage. By the way, it's also your orphanage. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to patrol that. While I'm on patrol, I can access the offices and everything. And then Lucius is like, but you're also Bruce Wayne. You run the orphanage. You can just go there in person. And so Bruce goes there, and he actually gets, he goes down there, meets Mr. Morrison, who runs the orphanage there. And he basically brings science equipment and, ice cream to really give to the children. While he does that, he tells Mr. Morrison, hey, Miguel ran away. And he's investigating. He's asking him, do you know why Miguel won't leave? And Mr. Morrison's like, basically, no. Some of them, they just come to the realization that they won't have parents come pick them up. And that depresses them, yada, yada. Anyways, Bruce goes, okay, fine, whatever. He has a good meeting with him. But then he calls Damian over. And I guess him and Damian, based off the relationship I see off of this one, Damian's been gone a while. I've read a few runs of Detective so far. I have not seen him in a while. Basically, Batman says, listen, I know it's been difficult to reach. I've been, doing patrol and everything. And Damian's like, okay, I understand that. But you're basically just now reconnecting with me to go find some other kid. Like, what's up with that? And Batman's like, listen, I just think that, Damian knows exactly why Batman's saying this. But he's like, okay, I get it. You want me to do it because, it's something that you can't focus completely on Batman. And also, you'd rather have a 15-year-old boy, someone who can probably identify with him better than a big scary bat. And I like the line from Damian that basically says, but we're going to talk about these orphanages. It's a bit disconcerting that you have a whole building full of potential backup Robins. And it's like something that only Damian would say.
Well, it's true. That's his track record. Is I'm gonna take in orphans and make them Robins. So that's his track record. So it's understandable that Damian would be a little bit on edge.
Just a little bit on edge. I thought it was funny, but you're right, exactly. And I like these. Okay, so this is where I have to give major credit to Fernando Blanco. There are several kind of panels where it goes through each day and the degrees. So Saturday, and it shows Damian talking to a group of residents outside the building, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Monday shows Batman kicking the can out of some people, 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Thursday, 29, and it shows each one. Batman kicking butt on patrol, Damian canvassing the area, trying to talk to anyone who may know where Miguel is.
It's interesting that they're giving you the temperature.
Yeah, it is. It really puts a sense of place, though, when you can see through the snow and everything. The pictures are just wonderful. The illustrations are wonderful because you get to see how, we're racing against time. That threat of inherent danger. You only saw Miguel for 4 or 5 panels as he was running away. But now you see the cold, the snow's getting more, and you kind of see it. It builds that sense of, okay, they have to find Miguel, then they have to find him fast. Anyway, it goes a whole week. And then finally it gets colder. So, it's 22 degrees, 18 degrees, 15 degrees. Finally on Saturday at 10 degrees, Damien contacts Batman and says we found him. And he's out on the ice and he's half conscious and he's just a mess. And Damien's trying to keep him together, say, you're right. Can you hear me? The Batmobile comes the next panel over. They bring him in, and they take him to the hospital. And again, as they're driving in the Batmobile, they're talking to Miguel, who still has some life in him to actually say things. So at first he's like, it's cold, I hurt, are you taking me back? I want to go back. And like, no, you're fine. We're going to need some help. And then he says, I'm sorry. And he says to Batman, my favorite superhero is Superman. And then Batman's like, I'll let you on a secret, Miguel. He's my favorite too. I thought that was like a funny little back and forth. Obviously trying to keep him talking and going, but it was a little funny kind of deal. And then this is where Miguel kind of lets the next point that I guess is going to be the future running detective, where Miguel says, that place that wasn't finding parents for all the kids, some kids just disappeared. I wanted to escape before I disappeared too, and I wanted to stop it from happening. I wanted to protect other kids. I wanted to find help. But he was afraid that no one would believe him because he's a kid and the adults weren't going to believe something as outlandish as that.
Not to interrupt you real quick, but that line is super cheap. Like, that's something you would see in one of like the stupid like Snicker ads that they put in the middle of the books. Like, he's my favorite too.
The funny thing is,
it's just a stupid.
No, okay, so it's a corny, cheesy line, but I think it shows Batman in a moment of empathy and trying to appeal to this kid. You know what I mean? Because you're right, it's not a great line at all. It's not. I'm not saying that it is. But what I am saying is that if this kid, and Miguel at this point, he's in a critical condition, he's kind of fading in and out, Batman's saying something to kind of go, you know what, like he's mine. So just a rare concession of like, I like him too. I get it. It's definitely like the Snickers ad that is literally on the next page. But I thought it was kind of funny, and especially for Batman to kind of have to deal differently with a child. You know what I mean? In the line of duty. We don't see a lot of that. So that was interesting to me. But all of a sudden, Miguel goes, Batman's like, we'll find the missing kids. You protected them, you did good. And Miguel goes, I saved them. And the Batman goes, you saved them. And then Miguel passes out. And what happens is Damien's like, oh my God, Miguel. And again, great artistry by Blanco. It shows them rush Miguel to the hospital. And as it does, you hear the D, you can see it. But in my head, I hear the D, D, D. And you can see the life support line on each of the bottom 3 panels before it finally flatlines. And that to me was like, oh, wow. And then it just cuts to Bruce back working out, back trying to like relieve the stress. Like it just goes, okay, Miguel's died, and moves on. And Lucius goes back to him and says, you had a hard night out. Damien practically passed out there. Did you save the city? And Bruce goes, yes. And the boy, and Bruce responds by still hitting the mat. And so Bruce goes and tells Lucius, listen, I checked the orphanage records. There's no sign of foul play. There's thorough follow-up. The records are meticulous. Every detail is there for every child. And something in that word causes Bruce to go, every child. And then he gets ready to go back out on patrol. And he says, we need to wake Damien and get in the car. And Lucius goes, the car's right there. And he points to the Batmobile. And Bruce is like, no, the other car. And so then it cuts to later. Basically, Bruce and Damien go back to the orphanage. And basically, Bruce tells Damien to wait outside until the police arrive. He goes inside. He goes straight down to Mr. Morrison's office. He says, you keep very good records. And Mr. Morrison's like, thank you. I don't really know what you're kind of meaning by that. And Bruce goes, you have measurements, weights, histories, allergies, injuries, academic and social progress for every child. You can track them for years after they leave. And Mr. Morrison's like, okay, I'm not sure what you're getting at. And then Bruce goes, only it's not every child. And he points to the picture of that there was already on his wall that shows a bunch of kids, but there's a certain amount of kids that aren't identified. And he says, they disappeared. These children don't exist. And then Mr. Morrison goes, Mr. Wayne, you don't understand. I never wanted to hurt them, but these people, they came with money at first and then threats, and I couldn't stop them. And then Bruce just decks the dude, knocks him out. And that whole page is just wham. and just lays the guy out. Guy's out cold. And it basically goes to the police coming in. And this is one thing I like by Damien. Damien kind of sneaks back inside when the police comes in and goes and whispers to Bruce, do you realize you're not wearing a mask, right? And then Bruce goes, it's not Batman's name on the building. It's the Wayne name. It's our name. These are Wayne children. They're my responsibility. I failed them. We're going to track down every single missing child, and we're going to punish every single person who took them. And then Damien goes, good. And then Lucius Fox from behind goes, very good. And it cuts to them just basically 2 months later making naming the Martha Wayne orphanage the Miguel Flores orphanage. And to me, I mean, listen, it was a nice, sweet story. I thought the art was good. Well, not sweet in that sense, but like a nice, neat kind of story.
Is that an annual? Please tell me it's an annual.
No.
That's not an annual?
No, it's not.
Good Lord.
Why? Well, let me finish. I want to get your thoughts on it, though, having already described it. But I thought it was a nice linear story. Love the artwork by Blanco. Some of the lines were cheesy, but I liked them. I did. I think Tom Taylor did a decent job on it. I would give this story a 4 out of 5. It was nice. It might leave the door open to continuing on with this storyline or with this arc if there is one. But you could also just leave this as a standalone adventure for Bruce and just assume that he took care of it, because this book does jump around. It jumps around a week when they're searching for Miguel. It jumps around later after Miguel's died. It jumps around 2 months after that when they renamed the orphanage. So that sense of time isn't exactly spelled out, and I think that leaves more room for interpretation there. But I did like that I could open the story, read it from front to back, and go, okay, I got a full story out of it. So for me, it's a 4 out of 5.
So my question is, what did Miguel die of?
Hypothermia. I mean, he was out there in the cold.
He just left without a jacket?
Well, he had like one jacket on, but as I said, it kept dropping in degrees. Like he just was trying to get away from there before he got killed. As it ends up happening, he ended up dying anyway. But he was gone for a week, and in that time, it went from 32 degrees to 10 degrees. Like every day. So who knows? He was, they were trying to track him down. He was going from family to family or trying to find a place to stay or something, but he didn't have a place to stay. Otherwise, he would have been there. So was kind of what,
What is this book leading to?
Well, that's what I'm not sure, and that's why I'm actually okay with giving it the grade I did. It could lead to, I mean, we just finished last detective that we read was that Year the Villain still was Mr. Freeze and Mrs. Freeze and everything there. It stopped there. Fine. Also, James Tynion was also writing that, so that's done. Now it's Tom Taylor. I'm not sure where he started. The way he did this book, he could continue with Batman and Damian trying to find missing kids. That could very well be the case. Or he could do, just another story.
It sounded like an annual to me. It sounded like a very incoherent story that has nothing to do with what's been going on in Batman. Is this the kickoff of a new creative team?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's Taylor and Blanco for right now. I have to do more research to see if that's the new team moving forward. I knew we are going to have a new writer with Tynion going over to Batman.
Yeah.
But, okay. I mean, again, I thought it was coherent in the sense of time-wise. No, it wasn't coherent. I will very much say that. But as far as just having a quick, beginning to end story, I think there's something to be said for that, and I think you get that in this.
Because the way
it may not necessarily lead off to something else. There may not be something else to flesh out that we as readers need to witness. Like, there was a problem there at the Martha Wayne orphanage, and now, Bruce is on it.
Just kind of the way you described that story has me a little bit worried that if that is the new writing team on Batman, it feels like it's going to be campy and cheesy now, especially with he's my favorite superhero too. That's like your Martha moment.
And exactly, I get you. Exactly what you call a weakness is what I call a moment of strength. I like seeing the other side of Batman, especially since we have a Batman title that is already not lacking in grit and darkness and having that sorts of grounded seriousness throughout every page, almost to the point of being overly dramatic, in my opinion. But in a detective comic, you have another side of it. You see another side of Batman. You see another side of Bruce. I'm not saying a side you want to see. It's not a side that you're going to watch all the time. Hey there, chum. Talking to Robin, let's go into Batcave and solve some mysteries or whatever. We're not getting that all the time, but
hey there, old chum, Alfred's dead. Let's go raid his stuff.
I mean,
let's go spelunking in his room for treasures.
I'd rather that than fight my father from an alternate timeline over the right to me to be Batman with my cat girlfriend, Dead Butler, and who the heck knows. So that's just me.
Tomato.
Okay, but I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I think it was a nice, solid story. I'm not looking at it as a sign of things to come. I'll wait till the next entry comes in to really judge that. For me right now, I'm just grading it on the story for what it was, and I thought it was okay. Can't complain.
All right. I mean, I didn't read it, so I will take your word for it.
All right.
But just the way you explained it. Not saying that you did anything wrong. I'm just saying like the way that you explained the going on in the book. It feels very campy and disinteresting to me. But
I get you on that.
As long as you liked it, that's all that matters, and I'm sure someone else out there is gonna like it. So that's kind of why I bailed on Detective long ago, and
really
I bailed on Detective after like during all the Clayface stuff, and
oh wow,
I just never got back into it. But I'm waiting for Tinian to take over, and I'm gonna see if we make what changes he makes because I love his writing. And I loved his time on Detective.
It was very good. I enjoyed it as well.
I mean, between what we got last week from Tom King and, what that sounds like, I'm starting to lose a little bit of faith in the Batman books. It almost sounds like they need to scale back the amount of Batman and write better stories. But for me, I'm going to start off with my pick of the week. My pick of the week is a comic from, I believe, Boom Studios. Is this Boom or is this Image? Boom Studios, from the creative team of Jeremy Hahn and Danny Luckert, and it is called Red Mother #1. That's the Virgin variant.
Ooh, I like it.
This book blew me away. I absolutely loved it. Red Mother #1 follows the story of this woman who, at the start of the book, her and her boyfriend are walking down the street, and they're talking about moving into together when they pass kind of a dark tunnel, and her boyfriend kind of turns and he spots something in the tunnel, and he's kind of like, what, she's kind of like, what's going on? What was that? And he's like, hold on, let me take a look. And he goes into the tunnel to see what's going on. And something starts pulling him in, and he starts screaming and asking for her help. As she kind of runs to the entrance to the tunnel, something comes shooting out of the tunnel and hits her in the eye and takes out her eye. So as she, then it cuts to her waking up in the hospital, and she's missing her eye, and she's kind of being investigated by the police, wanting to know. They're like, sorry, we know someone attacked you. We didn't catch anybody. We haven't seen anyone at the scene of the crime, but we can't find your boyfriend who you were with. And she keeps asking about him. They're like, we have no leads to where he's at. All we know is that you two were together. You were two of the last seen together on footage. It shows him walking into the tunnel, and then he disappears. So she's missing her eye, and she's trying to learn how to cope without having both eyes. And then it cuts to her getting a prosthetic eye put in. And after she gets this prosthetic eye put in, she starts having these headaches. And when she starts having these headaches, her vision turns completely red. And she says that when she gets these headaches, she feels like she can see out of both eyes again. And she's kind of getting this headache. So there's kind of like a little bit of it there where she's getting the headaches.
Ooh, I love the artwork.
And as she gets these headaches, and she starts seeing this demon in the background. And through this crowd of people, like she's in the city and this crowd of people's around, and her vision goes red, and she kind of sees this demon in the background. And as the demon creeps closer to her, she screams, and then her vision adjusts, and she's back into the crowd of people. And that's where it ends, with the picture of the monster that she saw. This book is a 5 out of 5 for me. The dialogue is fantastic. The art is fantastic. This creative team is fantastic. This was like, I was so into this book. I felt like I finished it in like 3 minutes, just because I was reading through it so fast. And I've read it a couple times now because I enjoyed it that much. I can't wait for issue #2. So I give Red Mother #1 a 5 out of 5.
Okay.
Perfect. Perfect score for me. So,
well, it's funny. That's the first perfect score I've heard when I've been on the show. So I'm gonna give a brief props to that.
5 out of 5.
That's good coming from you.
Yeah.
And then the artwork, even that panel I just saw where her seeing after the headache, it looked very visceral and it popped. It really caught my eyes. So that's glad. Solid score. Can't argue that at all.
Yeah, the The artwork is very well done. The writing and the lettering is very well done. This definitely gets a solid 5 out of 5 for me.
That's awesome.
I can't wait for issue number 2.
All right.
This is getting put on the pull list.
Put on the pull list. We have to have a little thing when a book that we just picked up goes on the pull list. There you go. No. All right, so I'm going to run through this one. I did not really enjoy this book very much. Spider-Man 2099 number 1. Written by the great Nick Spencer. Art by Z. Carlos, Brian Reber, and Andrew Crossan on colors. That's all I got to say. I don't know. Nick Spencer on the Spider-Man run's good, but I just was not a fan of much of any of it. It just kind of felt boring and kind of droned on, and then it was over. The artwork was nice. The covers have just been amazing. But, I mean, I like this cover. I always love Spider-Man 2099 visually. He just looks really cool. But in general, it's even hard to kind of break it down how this starts. Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, starts off, and he's having bad dreams. He's talking to his hologram / alarm clock / mentor / answering machine. And it's Lila. That's the name. And he's getting these messages, from his doctor, from his brother. He's suffering from withdrawal syndromes withdrawal symptoms of this drug that he was basically on. And he's also talking about his fractured relationship with his brother, how he is living up in the high life of Nueva York while his brother is helping those on the bottom, how he feels bad about it, but he's doing what he has to do, yada, yada. He gets a message, an immersion request from Tyler Stone for Alchemex. He gets transferred up there. He's talking with Tyler Stone, and Tyler says, listen, when I'm done here, I'm saying your dosage. And Miguel's like, listen, send as much as you want. I'm not taking it. And Mr. Stone's like, Miguel, don't act like I'm your pusher. No one forced you to subscribe to Rapture, which is what he's on. I didn't slip in your drink. You chose it. You signed up for it because you wanted the increased cognitive function, the neuroplasticity, and it was the right call. So basically, you did this, Miguel. Like, don't blame me that you're addicted to this. I'm gonna give you some more. You know what you have to do. And Miguel's like, no, not only are you having me hooked up on drugs, but you're putting horrible experiments out there for the bottom people of Nueva York to have to struggle and fight through, and it's not right. And long story short, nothing really comes out of it. He gets sent down to the Ravage, this is where it backtracks. So he goes down to the Ravage. It goes down to the Ravage 1 month ago, where he's looking at these like spider-like experiments that are dead down at the bottom of Nueva York. And ones that they mutated, they were exposed to the environment. Alchemex is very interested in those genetic mutations, so he's taking samples. He goes down there and he sees this horrible spider-looking alien. And then it cuts to him kind of dissecting it, breaking down the sequence and laying out the applications. The bosses were happy about it. And basically he had other concerns. And then it finally goes down to him trying to get Rapture. He was, desperately hooked on the thing. He goes, and it's an interesting thing that Spencer does here. I guess the lower class of Nueva York, there is this like head skull type of device that you can put on your head. I'm going to read just the panel here. It says, like I said before, there's no money in Nueva York. Your status and your access to goods and care are tied to your social capital score. So if anyone wants to use that capital, they got to be you. And this like skull type of, amulet or whatever kind of gives the poor person, whoever, the form for a short period of time of the person that they're making the business transaction with. So you're trying to buy illegal substance from me. I get to be you for a certain amount of time, and you get the substance that I can provide. That way I can use your form, your likeness, to go and buy stuff that I normally could not get looking like myself, having access to things I normally would not be experienced for myself. And really, I guess it's kind of run on an honor system because the traders are incentivized to make those kind of mystiques, that's what they're called, those transfers temporary, because they know they need the actual person to be there to come down to keep getting paid in the first place. But apparently the people that Miguel went to were trying to make it permanent. They were trying to kill the guy. All of a sudden, there's an explosion. Miguel's brother is there and saves him. And while this is happening, Miguel is like being saved and I guess blacking out and seeing images of first the spider mutation that he I guess helped create or helped work on, and then second, like Spider-Man 2099. He's talking to his brother. They have an argument about, you can help these people. And Miguel's like, no, I can't. I'm sorry, I have to go. As Miguel leaves, his brother says, oh, well, you know what? That's what Miguel says to his brother. I'm sorry, little brother. It seems like I'm always letting you down. And then he leaves. His brother goes, damn it, Miguel, why can't you? And he goes, wait a second. Maybe you still can. And he looks down, and there's that same little skull amulet that Miguel was working with the traders with to trade his likeness. So it cuts off that. So we're left to assume that maybe Miguel's brother will take the amulet to pass to Miguel. And at this point, Matt, if you're as bored as I am just describing it, then I think you understand the feeling I'm getting reading this book. Eventually, Miguel walks off. He's talking about how sad Gabe is. His younger brother is disappointing him, yada, yada. And then he's seeing these visions and these images of Doom 2099 and other assorted heroes and mutations from the 2099 universe. And then all of a sudden, he falls to the ground, and this guy goes, well, look at you. And it's an older guy. And the guy is walking on a cane towards him saying, well, look at you or me, I guess. And I guess we're left to assume that it's an older version of Miguel. And then it says to be continued in 2099 Omega. And honestly, I don't want to continue. I don't understand what this book is trying to do. The only glimpse you give Spider-Man 2099, which is why I bought the book, is the front cover and one panel aside from that. There's nothing here that was exciting, nothing here that was engaging. I mean, the writing, I guess, was good if I knew what direction it was going. The artwork was decent, but then again, all I'm seeing is Miguel, his family, and normal people up in the street of Nueva York in 2099. So I was just not a fan. It was kind of a waste of time. I would give it like a 1 out of 5. And I've been disappointed with the Spider-Man titles for months now. I've not read a single really good Spider-Man title. I think it's Web of Spider-Man. No, it's one of the Spider-Man book that I've heard that's been really good. I didn't get my hands on. I wish I had. I've only been grabbing the bad ones. Between Spider-Man 2099 and The Amazing Spider-Man, it's just been horrible. So I'm kind of venting here, but 1 out of 5 for that book easily. And me describing it is just as boring as it was to read it.
1 out of 5.
Yeah, I have no sympathy there.
1 out of 5. That's a little rough there.
I know, but you have to read it to see for yourself.
So my next book is going to be an IDW title. It's by the creative team of Joe Hill and Martin Simmons, and it's called The Shit-Talking Holmes Mystery, Dying is Easy.
Oh, okay.
This book is very dark, very mature. It's definitely not for young kids, but it is about a retired kind of disgraced homicide detective turned stand-up comedian. His stand-up comedian routine is very dark, and it's about his time as a homicide detective, and he tells very, very dark and insensitive jokes about dead bodies and serial killers and his time, pulling reference from his time as a detective and homicide. And the story revolves, this first issue is very dialogue heavy. So if you're into dialogue, it's a great book, but because most of it revolves around his stand-up routine. But he finds out that there's another rival comedian that follows him that's been stealing jokes. And after he finishes routine, he goes and joins his fellow comedians at the bar, and they're all kind of talking about how this other character, the protagonist, this other character has to die, or the antagonist has to die because he's just this terrible guy, and he got on the Jay Leno show, and he's kind of getting all the fame that these other guys aren't getting, but he's being accused of stealing jokes. So the main character is kind of like, well, I'm going to confront him about it. So he gets drunk and he goes and he confronts the guy about it. And the guy's like, so what? He's like, I tell your jokes better than you do. And they're funnier when they come from me too. And the main character is kind of like, that's messed up. And they get in a fist fight. So he ends up, like I said, he ends up getting drunk and in a fist fight and punching this dude out. And the next day it cuts to him in his apartment, and he gets a knock on the door, and he gets up to go get to answer the door, and it's the police, and they're notifying him that they're investigating him and he was like, what do you mean? This dude called the cops on me for punching him in the face? Like, what a bitch. And they're like, well, no, this isn't because you punched him in the face, it's because he's dead. And that's where it ends. So it's very dark, it's very like I said, dialogue heavy. It's got a kind of a gritty sense of humor, very dark sense of humor to it. I really enjoyed it. Even though it was dialogue heavy, I really enjoyed it. It was a quick read. I'm looking forward to issue 2. I'm going to give it a 4.25 out of 5. 4.25 out of 5 for Dying is Easy. IDW #1. Good book. Definitely picking it up if you're looking for something off-brand to kind of read. It's definitely worth checking out.
Okay, I'm glad you found some books you've enjoyed this week.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, that's good. I mean, I'm going to go briefly through a book that I also enjoyed this week. And I'm not going to give anything away. There's kind of too many twists in it for me to even really kind of do that. But the book is Doom 2099 #1. And for those who saw, that was the cover. Love the cover. I've always loved the illustrations for Doom 2099 in all iterations. I just think it's so cool when it's done right, and I haven't seen many that have been done wrong from its inception. So I was really excited to get to this. It was by writer Chip Zdarsky with artist Marco Castillo. And the book is awesome. The book is really, really good. It follows almost, so I commented this on Twitter earlier. The people who, the creative team here between Zdarsky and Costello who made this book either did their research or read the original run, because there's a lot of parallels between Doom 2099, this run, and the original Doom 2099, where Dr. Doom finds himself in the future having to adjust, and you know, he's in a world where there's already been Doom bots of his at the time who have been kind of trying to take over. Doom has to go and take over, you know, that world there. He tries originally, gets defeated, comes back with better armor, more upgrades. He's ready, and he takes over there. Very much similar to this, where Doom wakes up, you know, he's like, where am I? He gets saved, has a bunch of adventures where he's really trying to understand where he's at and the technology he needs, and just being the superior mind that he is, but also understand the world that he's in. And he catches on pretty quick. And as he's doing this, he has hallucinations of him talking with Reed, like Reed Richards is in his head. And that dialogue, that back and forth, is beautifully presented in these illustrations. All from the beginning when, you know, Doom is first coming to after being unconscious and being dragged through the hot desert sun, to when he finally gets his armor on that he's already made with the help of an aged tinkerer, and really gets himself looking like the Doom that we all know and love. Down to the confrontation that he has with the Doombot, who's like, oh, you must be Doom. I assumed you were another old Doombot or madman, but either way, I'm about to take you down. And Doom's like, you know, that's nice, but I'm the real deal. You might as well show me some respect and just give up. The Doombot doesn't give up. They have a fight, and Doom loses, just like he did in the original run. So he starts back at the beginning, and that's where it ends. And I'm glad, because it's going to build in a certain way, much like it did at the beginning. It wasn't like Doom just came to 2099 and took over. He had to work to get there. And I like the way that it's done here. The twist, and I'm not going to give it away, is very, very good. You definitely should read it. The artwork is amazing, and the storyline, the dialogue, it all serves its purpose. Nothing is overused. Everything is well placed. I really enjoyed the reading of this book. I honestly just want to see more Doom 2099, like once he gets that upgraded armor, because the colors are just amazing. The illustrations are amazing. Costello did some beautiful work here, and Chip Zdarsky's already a legend as far as writing in Marvel, and just the way that he has done it here and really takes you into the mind of Doom as he's going about his method, his process, and understanding where he's at and how he could best take advantage. It's great. I give it a 5 out of 5. Doom 2099 #1.
Wow, 5 out of 5, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Well, before I move on to my next book, I want to do an honorable mention, shout out for anyone who's in the speculation game. A book that came out last week that is definitely on the spec list. That should be one that you should check out is Miles Morales Spider-Man #13. This is the 2099 variant right here. And the reason I'm saying that you should be on the lookout for it in spec-wise is because it is the first appearance of Billy Morales. That's right, Miles Morales has an infant sister, and the emphasis put on her is so great that I feel that she is going to be a character and a very important figure throughout the Marvel universe, especially this book moving forward. So I would say you could probably still get this at your local comic shops for cover price. I'd say pick it up, and definitely worth stashing it away just in case she becomes a bigger figure. It seems like, and there's a book that comes out this week I'm going to recommend you do the same thing with it. It's J.J. Abrams' Spider-Man run. It's issue 3 of that. Look, with the way the Spider-Verse is going, and it seems like Spider-Man is the character where all these first appearances matter and they become hot. So if you're in the spec game, you can probably still get a couple issues of the J.J. Abrams Spider-Man #1 at your local comic shop. I definitely recommend picking that up, as well as Miles Morales 13, just if you're in the spec game for the potential later on down the line of Billy Morales. So just something for you to be on the lookout for if you're kind of in that spec realm as well as reviews. I'm going to move on to, I'm going to save one of my favorite books for the week for my next one, but I'm going to move on to Fallen Angels #3. This was a quick read for me too, as this book is finally starting to pick up a little bit, in my opinion. You see in this book, you still get the Psylocke having her whole identity crisis thing, but it kicks off with them fighting this giant robot. And Psylocke's telling X-23, look, if we're going to survive here, you've got to let loose. You've got to let go. Nothing you can do is going to shock me. You don't need to hold back from me. Go wild. Let me see what you have. Show me your stuff. And she pretty much does. And as she's going crazy, Cable lunges at this thing and it starts shooting at this giant robot. And he kind of gets blasted away from them as X-23 and Psylocke are fighting this giant robot. And X-23 ends up bringing it down and destroying it. As they do, Cable kind of gets abducted by by this weird entity, and they're like, well, we need to go look for him. And X-23 and Psylocke are kind of like, where's Cable? Where did he go? And she's like, he got blasted away. And she's like, well, we need to go after this robot, as the robot was trying to make it escape. And X-23 is like, no, we need to find Cable. And Psylocke's like, no, Cable's a warrior. He'll want us to finish the mission. He knows what's at stake. We have to go after him. And then it cuts to a picture of Cable, and he's kind of like strapped to this table. And in walks this very, he almost looks like a mechanized Taskmaster. I thought for a minute it was Taskmaster. And so it says that, let's see here, because this is, it says, the end of technology, the end of mutants, the end of humanity, and the end of difference itself. And it ends with a picture right here. That's the final page. And it's like a mechanized like skeleton with all these weapons. And at first I thought it was like maybe like a Taskmaster clone or a mechanized Taskmaster, but that's where it ends. Good book. This book finally picked up a little bit for me. It was nice finally getting to see this team of X-23, Psylocke, and Cable in action. I mean, other than fighting the robot, I'm going to give it a 3.5. I like the story. I like the action, but it didn't really progress as much as it could because the majority of this was X-23 and Psylocke fighting this robot, and it kind of didn't take a turn till the end. So hopefully issue 4 will do more to progress this story. So I'm going to go 3.5 on Fallen Angels.
Okay, pretty decent. I feel like I've either A, given great reviews or B, horrible reviews. And for the last book I read this week is another horrible review, and I feel really bad doing it. But I have to, especially since I love the series so much, and it feels it was kind of a letdown. It is Tales from the Dark Multiverse, #1 for the Teen Titans, The Judas Contract. Whew, boy, this was a disappointment. I mean, it's not even really a plot to kind of go into. Just imagine that Tara from the Judas Contract classic 1980s Teen Titans story went crazier earlier and killed everyone. And you have the plot for this book. I didn't like the fact that if you look at all the other Tales from the Dark Multiverse books, everyone kind of hinges on this crucial point in time where a sad miscalculation is made, one turn is changed that slightly but irrevocably changes the course of the rest of the events in the book. This one wasn't even that. It was really like more of a miscommunication of anything. And I guess I could say this because not even a big deal. They all are meeting up. They've had their battle. Kid Flash is leaving the Titans as he did. Dick Grayson is saying, listen, I'm no longer Robin. I'm still going to be in the team, but I have to figure out what I am. Same thing. And forget, before I rush about how disappointed I was, I didn't even go over the creative team. The writers were Kyle Higgins and Matt Groom, and the artwork was done by Tom Rainey and Hi-Fi on the colors.
That's shocking since Higgins is, he's a very good writer.
Yeah, and between Rainey and Hi-Fi, the colors and illustrations look nice, especially the classic shot-for-shot panels that were taken directly from that 80s Marv Wolfman and George Perez story. I mean, it looked amazing, beautifully rendered. You got to feel the whole 80s in it, and I really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, there was a little else to enjoy. Tara she had a conversation with Dick Grayson, who notices that she seems to be kind of distracted. He says, listen, make your own path. You know what I mean? You don't have to live in Brion's shadow, and he's like, Geoforce, right? And she's like, oh, yeah, that's what I meant. No, she meant, I don't have to live because, of course, Dick didn't know this. I don't have to live in Deathstroke's shadow. Deathstroke's there. She goes down to him. And mind you, I never have liked the way that, aside from a couple stories, Tara's been presented. Or Tara, I'm sorry, I keep saying Tara. It's been presented. Because, the optics of that whole situation being a minor with Deathstroke and having that relationship and just being all evil and not having a sympathetic side and just, she's bad because she's bad. When, you could do a whole bunch of deep thinking to this and go so many different layers as to why she's that way or character development or anything there. Fine. I don't like she's evil for the sake of just being evil when she's been in a lot of situations that you could see why this could lend this way for her, why she would act that way in retaliation to being used and abused and whatnot. Anyways, they kind of follow that same line where she's just evil. And she goes to Deathstroke and says, listen, I don't understand why you are so weak, and you talk about being a soldier and everything, but all I see is picture your family around, and you have this old guy, Wintergreen, who's a geriatric soldier, and you still have him around. And, Deathstroke's like, there's nothing soft about rewarding the loyalty of good soldiers, yada, yada. And then he slaps her. He's like, I give you a reprimand for getting your place, for not respecting your superior. And it shows a panel where he's looking at her mad, and you can see Tara, shocked and then angry. And then she basically rips apart the entire cabin that they're in, and then totally just offs Deathstroke in just gruesome fashion. And then apparently kills Wintergreen after forcing Wintergreen to give her the same operation that was given to Deathstroke. So she gets that in addition to her own powers, and she becomes Gaia. I think that's how you say it.
She becomes Gaia?
Gaia? Gaia? Anyway.
Gaia?
And then from that point on, she kills all the Titans in a panel that is so blink and you miss it. They're all dead. I read it and I went, they're not dead. It gives a moment to Firestar, and that's about it. All of them are dead. Except for Dick Grayson and obviously Kid Flash, because they were gone. She goes to find Kid Flash, and again, artwork in spots were amazing. That whole confrontation with him escaping and running away to go with to disappear in the crowd of, I think it was the marathon they had, was amazing. And it was ripped panel for panel. Tara finds him. She's about to kill him. All of a sudden, Kid Flash comes and saves him, and he has Robin's uniform, and they get dressed and they do one last Titans together type of thing. And it's a really cool panel as they're both approaching Tara to kind of take her down. Unfortunately, they lose. They die. But they knew they were going to die because they're really just buying time for the biggest person to take down Tara, and that was Superman. Superman comes down. They have this big fight, but Tara's able to turn the rock that she is around into kryptonite. And she's also strong thanks to having Deathstroke's enhanced abilities to be able to withstand Superman's attacks. She basically blows up, and kid you not, look at this scene if you can see it. If not, check out the book. That is the entire city they're in. She blows it up. Everything gone, destroyed, destruction, lava and magma everywhere. And Superman goes, "Oh God, Terra, the whole city, what did you do?" And he's fighting her. And then Terra turns the rock around into kryptonite to basically weaken Superman. And then says, "Listen, you can't stop me. Nobody can stop me. I'm causing these attacks all over." And it shows a panel of Wonder Woman trying to stop it in Washington, and Geoforce and Batman and the Outsiders trying to stop it in London, and Green Lantern trying to stop it in Tokyo. And she's like, "I'm destroying everything." And then Superman's like, "This won't make you happy." And she's, again, just because poor character development, Tara's like, "I don't care if I'm happy. I feel alive. I can do what I want." And all of a sudden you have this like sad moment of like, what type of life is that? And Beast Boy comes flying in as a bird. And he's like an injured bird. He morphs into a guy, morphs back into Beast Boy. And he's been just horribly damaged. His jaw's hanging, faces melted, all sorts of things.
He looks like the Joker.
Like, listen,
he looks like he Death of the Family Joker.
He does, exactly. He's like, "How could you do this? We gave you a home. We trusted you. I cared for you." And she's like, "Oh, you cared for me, yada, yada. Oh, see, I cared for you too. About as much as a god can care for an ant." And then she just kills him. And then basically puts the last little stab in Superman, kills him too. And then at the end of it just shows Tempest figuring out, looking at the world that belongs to Gaia, and it's just a whole bunch of fire as she's riding on this like rock fire dragon. And that's the end of the book. The book was freaking hot garbage, horribly done. I love the artwork, and I didn't like anything else. The storyline was basically, what if we just made Terra go crazy earlier, also with that much more power, and just killed everyone? And it just didn't do anything for me. I didn't feel sympathetic. Every other book, there was at least a moment. For Batman in Nightfall, for Lois Lane in Superman, for Blue Beetle in Infinite Crisis, a missing one. Even Sinestro in Blackest Night. There was always that one character where it hinged for a moment that you would at least see where they were coming from, and then see the descent into whatever the book became. And that is not what happened in Teen Titans: The Judas Contract. Not at all. I would say, if you like the artwork, I'm going to give it that. It was very nice. I did like some of the old 80s classic feel, and it felt like I was reading an older book from that time. And that's great. And the panel for panel shots that were taken were also amazing. But aside from that, the plot just, it wasn't well thought out. And when you had such a strong run of books in this series, it just sucks. Like if this is all put in a trade paperback, I'll probably still buy it, but that's going to be like the weakest entry by far. It's not even close. I mean, Blackest Night was up, not Blackest Night, Blackest Night was up there for me. But I liked all of them. Blackest Night would have just been bad because I liked it the least of the others. But I love those books. But with Teen Titans: The Judas Contract, no.
So what's your score?
1 out of 5.
Oh boy, that's not bad. You weren't here last week when I gave last issue of Batman like a 0.5.
I think I rewatched it. Yeah, that was something.
Give it terrible. Before I review my last book, I want to give another shout out and speculation, spec alert, to a milestone book that came out last week, and that is IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue 100. This is a power-packed issue. Now, I have to admit, full disclosure, I am probably about 10 to 15 issues behind on Turtles. It's one of those books I've collected but not read. But of course, I had to get issue 100. Issue 100 is big on the spec right now, as it is the return of Orokusaki, or the return of Shredder, and also the death. That's right, spoiler alert, the death of Splinter, aka Hamato Yoshi. And it shows it, right, spoiler alert, in 3, 2, 1. There's Shredder carrying Splinter's dead body.
Gosh.
This book feels big for a number of reasons. Not just because it's the return of the Shredder, and not just because it's the death of Splinter, but because of the way they did it. It feels like it is in comics, deaths never stick. So they kill somebody off, and years later they bring him back. Wolverine they killed off, and they brought him back a year later. I think the only one that's technically stuck, and I might not even be still around, is Elektra. I know Elektra has been dead and stuck for a while. I'm not sure if they brought her back yet.
Yeah.
But I know Jean Grey's death sticked for a while, but now she's been killed and brought back. Yeah. But this feels very definitive, and I say that because the final panel, if you all know the story of Turtles or the history of Turtles, The reason Orokusaki and Humatayoshi, Splinter, and Shredder have beef is because when they were in Japan, they loved the same woman. And Humatayoshi went out and married her, and in his rage, Orokusaki killed his wife, and Yoshi came home to find him sitting over her dead body, and that's why he fled to America and got with the ooze and turned into Splinter and raised the turtles. So at the very last issue of the book, it shows him in the spirit realm being reunited with her on the very last panel right here. And then right there, it's a picture of them kissing, and it says Finn at the bottom. So it feels like it's a very definitive end to the character of Splinter. And with issue 101, we're moving to uncharted territory. We're about to see what the turtles are like and how they operate in a world where Splinter is no longer there to guide them. So it's uncharted territory. So IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 100. It's a monumental 100th issue. Definitely worth picking up. You can probably still find a copy at your local comic book shop. But it'll be interesting definitely to see where this book and how the turtles move forward without their father and master and just all around idol no longer there. So
very good. Wow.
Definitely worth picking up. But moving on to my final book of the week, in a book that has moved officially into my first place as far as the X-Men books go. That's X-Force number 3. Murat, look, last week, if you listened to the show last week, you heard me say that every X book that came out last week was a disappointment to me. And this week is quite the opposite. I liked Fallen Angels number 3, and I loved X-Force number 3. X-Force seems to be the driving force between all the X-Men stories right now, which is weird because you would think it would be the main X-Men story, but after that whole geriatric crap last week, that's not the case. This book picks up where Wolverine and Kid Omega are in the mutant facility where they find Domino in a containment unit, and they found out that the assassins that killed Charles Xavier got into Krakoa by chopping off pieces of Domino and forming it to her body and forming it to their bodies. So they're using pieces of mutants to get into Krakoa. And you see Kid Omega and Wolverine kind of it's just them breaking her out of the container as they do this giant like skeleton thing that looks like it's straight out of Attack on Titan. Attacks them, and they can't fight back. Kid Omega can't fight back because he's got the power dampener. There's power dampeners around, and he can't use his mutant's abilities. And as they're running, Domino kind of, as she's clinging to life, speaks up and says, "Logan, I've got a power dampener on my deck. Remove it." And if you know Domino, her abilities are luck. So Wolverine removes it, and as he does, they get the luck to where the power dampeners in the facility fail, and Kid Omega can finally use his powers, and he forms a giant rocket launcher and blows this massive thing away. But then it cuts to Krakoa, and Jean Grey is standing over the pod to resurrect Charles Xavier. Now, here's my biggest issue with these X books, and I said it when House and Powers were coming out. It feels like death in these books have absolutely no consequence because Xavier was dead. Xavier was dead. The whole reason Krakoa came about, the leader of Krakoa was dead. And it felt like it had a power behind it, and it was like, oh man, like this has got something to it. Well, now they just brought him back, and they rebirthed him through their abilities in Krakoa in the pods through gold balls and the gene splicing of Mr. Sinister. They bring back Charles Xavier, and kind of mutant human population shows up at the Greats of Krakoa, and they're sitting there, screaming about how they want to know what's going on with Xavier. Why haven't they seen Xavier? What's going on? And Magneto's kind of trying to calm them down. And Black Tom is there kind of instigating everything. And then Charles Xavier walks out of the portal, and he's like, I assure you, I assure you that the rumor of my demise has been greatly exaggerated. and he's standing there, and he's like, we'll deal with this in our own manner. And then it cuts to one of the assassins that killed him that was clinging to life, because Wolverine pretty much butchered everyone else that was clinging to life. And as he's sitting there clinging to life, a force comes out of you see someone come out of the shadows and put a hand over his face and suffocated him, finally finishing him off. As he's finished off, Kid Omega kind of uses his abilities to create a new eye and new limbs for Domino till they can get back to Krakoa, so she can kind of work on her own. And meanwhile, in Krakoa, they're having a meeting of the secret council to talk about kind of what's going on. And Domino advises them of this man with a peacock tattoo. So we're getting a new villain in the X-Men universe, and you haven't seen him yet. He runs an organization that they're calling Xeno, but he's a man with a peacock tattoo on his arm there, if you can see it. So basically, the whole issue, or the whole thing with X-Force is, when they started Krakoa, the Krakoa was supposed to be a safe haven for mutants. Only mutants were supposed to be able to come in and leave. No humans or threats were supposed to come to mutants on Krakoa. Well, obviously that's not the case, because this organization is using mutants in mutant body parts to allow them to travel to Krakoa, and they attacked and killed Charles Xavier on Krakoan soil. So the secret council is meeting about what to do about the fact that people can now infiltrate Krakoa as they're being detected as mutants, because they're using mutant body parts to go undetected. So that's why in the first issue, when they showed up, it registered as Domino was coming through the portal, and it wasn't Domino, it was these assassins. I give X-Force a 4.75 out of 5. This book has been fantastic. Like I said, it's leading the charge for me in the X books. I can't wait for issue 4. And like I said, it seems to be the driving story around this whole X-Men series right now. And so Charles Xavier says, usually you're used to seeing him, one other thing, he's hearing him say, "To me, my X-Men." Well, in this issue, he says, "To me, my X-Force." So he's putting together a new X-Force team to do and lurk in the shadows, to do kind of black ops and undercover, what, the dirty work, while he tries to save face and say that there's nothing wrong in Krakoa. Nobody can attack Krakoa. There's no people coming into Krakoa to try and put a calm face on while his X-Force does the dirty work and the Black Ops works behind the scenes. So 4.75 on X-Force. It was a fantastic read this week. I'm very, very, very impressed with all the books I read this week. Not a bad book in the bunch. Again, some were weaker than others, but I'm telling you, my two random picks on IDW is Dying is Easy and I can't remember the other name, the fucking Red Mother, were absolutely fantastic, and I was pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, I didn't have the same poor week that you did, Corbin.
Yeah, there was a lot of variance to my books. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, a lot of variance. You had the good ones. I liked Detective Comics 1017. I thought it was okay. I enjoyed Doom 2099 number 1. That was my clear head and shoulders above best book of the week. One of the two weaker ones was Spider-Man 2099 number 1, and of course Tales from the Dark Multiverse, the Judas Contract. Not pleasant at all. So, when it was good, it was good, and when it was bad, it was ugly. And that's all I got to say about that.
So yeah, that is our review this week. Guys, if you're reading any of these books that we reviewed this week and you feel the same way, or you feel differently about a book we read, or there's something you're reading that you feel like that we need to pick up and get in on, and you want to hear our opinion on, please leave a comment down below. Hit us up in the chat. Send us a message on the Absolute Geek Facebook page. Whatever you got to do to let us know, to say, hey, I read this book and I disagree or agree, or hey, you need to be checking this book out. I know Jay's reading a lot of different books than we are. Mm-hmm. But it was a weird week, because when Corbin and I sat down, we were like, man, neither one of us have a single of the same book. Now, I know you were reading the X titles. Did you bail on all the X titles?
Yeah, I kind of did.
I'm telling you, man, X-Force and Marauders is worth reading.
It is.
X-Force and Marauders definitely are worth it. I'm going to give X-Men a couple more issues. I've already bailed on New Mutants. I don't plan on going back. Fallen Angels, I'm going to give it, it's issue 3. I'm going to give it to issue 5. If it hasn't at least progressed satisfactory to me by issue 5, I'll probably bail on that. But right now, I think the books in the X series you got to pay attention to are X-Force and Marauders.
All right. I'll do it. Hey, you talking me back on it because after a couple of bad New Mutants and one or two, but I was like, forget it.
Honestly, X-Force is the only book in the X-Men run that I have not yet been like, there's been a bad issue. There's not been a bad issue of X-Force. X-Force seems to be the standalone solid. That's kind of why I've readjusted my rankings and I put it ahead of Marauders now, just because last week's issues of Marauders was kind of a letdown. And my biggest issue with these X books is there seems to be a theme, like, or at least last week there was. So like every book that came out was focused on Sebastian Shaw, and it seems to be a theme. Like they just focus on one character and it runs across that whole like arc of books that comes out that month or that week, and it's just like, come on, give me the main story already. I don't want this sidey stuff with Sebastian Shaw. I don't care. Like you left us in this cliffhanger of Charles Xavier being killed. What's going on with that? You left us in the cliffhanger with Domino, them finding Domino all torn apart in a tube. What's up with that? So it's nice that X-Force isn't doing that, and they're continuing on with the story. And the cover and artwork is beautiful. I can't say enough about this book. It's fantastic.
There you go. Solid review right there.
For sure. But guys, I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us tonight. I know it was a quick episode, still a little over an hour. But this again is our final show for 2019. 2020, we will be back and ready to go. Maybe we'll have a year review or a 2019 top 10 list of books to go over. But yeah, guys, so for this final episode, it's been I know it's only episode 5, but it's been a lot of fun reviewing comics again, especially with Corbin and Jay. I apologize that we couldn't get Gregory Schoen from Raygun on. We're gonna get him on as soon as we can. Things happen. I know Jay wishes he could have been here, but he's sick with the flu, so things happen. But I just want to remind everyone real quick before we sign off. This Friday night, 7:30 on YouTube, the Absolute Geek Podcast is doing our annual holiday episode. We have a phone number on the Facebook page you can check out. Go there, and actually I can flash it, or I can give it to you here too in just a second. It is 623-396-6143. That's 623-396-6143. If you listen to Absolute Geek Podcast, me and Corbin there every Friday, make sure to call that number by 3 p.m. on Friday. Leave us a voicemail about your favorite moment from the past year of Absolute Geek, and we're going to play it along with that clip on the air live and discuss it. And the holiday episode is always one of my favorites. It's always a fantastic time, so
awesome. Definitely
check that out. But yeah, for this week's episode of Tales from the... Well, before I sign off, do you have anything else you want to say, Corbin?
Hey, nothing else, man. I'm excited for the holiday episode. Thanks for catching on and reading these books. And you know what? Like, it's only 5 episodes for me, 3 or 4, but it's been a good ride and plenty more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So for this episode of Tales from the Spinner Rack, I'm Matt.
And I'm Corbin.
Saying happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. Have a happy and safe New Year. And we'll see you guys in 2020.